We are so excited to be here today. Thank you for allowing us to be here with you to talk about this very important subject of anger. You know, anger is something that all of us have had to deal with at one time or another. And whether you're really good at processing anger and letting go of it, or whether it is something that has happened to you in childhood and that you have just carried it on to adulthood, God's plan is for us to reap the benefit of anger. He desires peace in our innermost part. He has done everything and laid out the truth of Scripture to allow us to apply it and live a life that is free from the consequences of anger. And that's what our hope is for you today. We want to show how He can take our anger and allow His truth to show us what we are really lacking. Show us where our basic needs are. Show us where our expectations are, and realize that He is able to work a plan to best suit our needs. You know, anger is a secondary emotion. And basically what that means is that there is something that I feel first, and then the anger happens. In your key, in the characteristics section, it allows us to see that hurt, injustice, fear, and frustration. Hurt, injustice, fear, and frustration are the primary sources of anger. So, someone that I love hurts my feelings. It can also be a physical pain that I can show anger for. Injustice, things are not fair. We go through this all the time. Someone else gets promoted, somebody else gets the job. 3 people are invited out to dinner and I am not one of those. But the unfairness of life, the frustration in life, I try to meet a goal, but something is blocking it. I am doing a project with someone and they fall down on their part of the project. The last of these primary sources is fear. There are times that we make choices in our life and we find ourselves in situations that we don't know how to get out of. We don't know what to do when we're in it. We don't know what decisions to make. And that can cause anger as well. Whenever we're unsure, whenever we're uncertain, whenever we're in a situation where I don't want to be, I don't know how to get out, and maybe other people have put us in those situations, and that can cause a lot of anger. There are 4 magnitudes of anger, and that means that there are 4 levels of anger. One of them is just indignation, and we realize Jesus was indignant. When the disciples did not allow the children to come to Jesus and sit on His lap and visit with Him, it says that Jesus was indignant, and He said, "Suffer the little children to come unto me." What I'm hoping that we're seeing is that anger is something that is normal. It is natural. There is power in anger, but there are also problems in anger. Anger is kind of like that dashboard light on your car, and whenever we feel it, we realize that some action needs to be taken. The anger is not the sin. The anger is not the problem. It is simply the warning light saying something needs to change. The second one is wrath. Wrath is a revenge. Wrath is wanting revenge. I know that we have heard that God is a God of wrath. He is also a God of love. But that wrath means that something is wrong and we need to make it right. It allows the inner emotion of anger to come out to external behaviors. I feel something, therefore I'm going to do something. That is wrath. Fury is the next step. That is a fiery anger. That is when we lose self-control. We want to punish. It is overwhelming. And then the last one, I am afraid that we have all seen issues of rage. We have men in our families possibly that have raged. We see and hear about road rage. Rage is something where all sense goes away. It is a loss of self-control, often to the extent of violence. In order for us to work effectively with somebody, what we need to realize, there are different kinds of anger. People show it differently. It's misplaced differently. Prolonged anger is one of the toughest ones. It's held in for a long period of time. We've been talking about in childhood, when something happens in childhood, and now I'm 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, and those feelings of lack of love, that I was not important, that I do not feel secure or free to be myself, that people are always looking down on me, that I will never make it. I will never make the right decision. I will never be what somebody else wants me to be. That grows with me. That is prolonged anger that is not processed and released. The correct way to do it, when somebody angers me, when I get angry about a situation or a person, I deal with it right then and then move on. That is the healthy way of dealing with anger. It's a lot like a pressure cooker. The pressure cooker is designed to make meat tender for a good thing. And it has a valve on the top of it. So when the heat builds up inside, the valve is released just a little bit and the steam comes out. That's how we should be, with that valve of steam coming out just a little at a time as things happen. The problem is we tighten the valve, we stuff things down, and the heat builds up and things explode. The pressed down anger is another thing. As something happens, I deny it. I press it down. I act as if it didn't happen, and I can go about my life just as normal. Another way that we release anger is provoked. That's that short temper, that short fuse. Something happens and I react. And then the last one is profuse anger. It's like the volcano. It's going everywhere. It has built up. The lava, everything is just spewing. We're not stopping who gets hit. If I have not let that steam come out, if I have not told someone about the abuse and steps have been taken, then chances are way too good I am going to become an abuser myself. Bullies are made the same way. Dad towards a boy at home, somebody on the playground to anyone. We're hearing so much about the cyberbullying now, and how do you stop that? But on the text, on the internet, on the playground, and in the home, someone has a lot of anger built up and know where to go with it. And where do they go? To somebody that they perceive to be weaker. Even as adults, if an adult has not properly handled the incredible injustice done to them as a child and the anger coming in, then as an adult, I am also bullying. I am getting that anger out some way. There are also those of us who are not able or choose not to aggressively release our anger. And so where does it go? It comes right here. There are so many children nowadays that have started cutting, so many teenagers that have found a way of release, and that's what they're going to call it, is release. The pain that's built up, the embarrassment, the shame, the anger, and what shame is I am no good. And we get those messages from our home, from our family of origin, that I am no good. And that's one of the distortions, that's one of the lies that we carry through life. And I need release. I'm not going to take it out on you, but I can take it out on me. The issues that we have been talking about, how I take anger out aggressively by being a bully, by being an abuser, the way that I take it out towards myself, towards depression or cutting or even suicide, allows us to realize that we have been holding on to the anger. That is that prolonged anger. What we realize is that the only thing in life we have control over is our thoughts. The more I think about something, the more emotion builds up, and then an action is going to happen. Moses was like this. When Moses was watching the Egyptian army take advantage of the Israelites who were their slaves over and over and over and mistreating them, his anger grew, his frustration grew. You realize Moses was an Israelite, and Pharaoh asked that all of the young boys, 2 years old and younger, be put to death. Moses should have been put to death. But interestingly, he came to live in the palace of that very king that ordered his death. So he grew up there, almost as his grandson, and he is watching his fellow Israelites being mistreated for all of his life. One time he couldn't take it anymore, and what did he do? You may know this story. But he went out, and while an Egyptian was mistreating and beating an Israelite, he killed the Egyptian and then hid his body in the sand. That is one way that we see the power of anger and the problems that anger brings with it. When we react to anger, there are typically problems, and that brings regret. That's what happened to Moses. And what we can learn from him is that anger is not the issue. Anger is not the sin. But what I do with the anger is what we need to focus on. Moses sees something happening and it gets him angry. He has two choices at this point. And one is to act, and the other one is the one that he chose to do, and that is react. Typically, that comes with problems. That comes with regret. The guilt is not in the anger. And if you are feeling guilty because of your anger, please realize that is not the place of guilt. Our guilt comes in what we do with it. When Jesus was in the temple and the money changers were defiling the house of God, he threw over the tables, money scattering, doves flying all over everywhere, but his purpose was to cleanse the temple. His purpose was good and was honorable and for the Lord's best. God always wants his best when he allows anger. When we realize that that red light is flashing, let's check and see, are there boundaries that I need to reset? Are there people I need to forgive? Are there things in me that need changing, that need cleansing, so that this temple can be as he purposed it to be? In your key, you're going to be walking through to the characteristics of unresolved anger. What happens when I hold on to this? There are physical symptoms, there are emotional symptoms, there are even spiritual symptoms that happen as I hold on to this anger. Some of these have been mentioned in here before, and maybe you are suffering from some of these. But physical symptoms, what about headaches or heart disease, high blood pressure, or insomnia? Anger is not something that is just taken care of right here. Anger is something that makes a home inside your heart and inside your body and inside your relationship with the Lord. Emotional symptoms can be anxiety and bitterness, depression, fear, and worry. And then when we hang on to anger, something happens with our relationship with the Lord. I don't feel I can make the decisions that I felt so secure about making before. I'm not sure if he's listening to me. I am not sure if he's directing my life any longer. But as I hold on to anger and refuse to deal with it, to process it, or to forgive, then that connection can be broken. We've heard of the suggestion to count to 10. When you're angry, count 10. It's not the simple fact about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 10. It is allowing us to get the mindset and an understanding and a concern for the other person's welfare. This is a time when I can appropriately calm myself down and in a controlled manner respond to what has just happened. That is the acting over the reacting. I think there's a few interesting actions that we do, some appropriate actions, and they're listed in your key under causes. Do you use tactful, compassionate words when you're responding? Do you see the other person's point of view? Do you want to help the person who has angered you? I can already tell you that typically my responses are not like this. Some of the inappropriate responses would be using tactless, condemning words, or to see only your own point of view and try to get that across. Or do you want to punish the one who has angered you? There's more of these questions that you can use as a checklist to kind of determine how you typically respond to anger. In our definition earlier, we talked about when a need or an expectation was not met. We all have expectations in life. When we get in the car, we kind of expect it to start. When we leave the office, hopefully we'll get home without getting stuck in traffic. So many things happen in our daily lives that we see as distractions or that set us back from what we want as our goal. These are expectations, things that should not happen, things that I don't deserve to have happening to me. We have expectations towards other people. They should always be there for me. They should help me when I need them. They should be available when I need them. I have expectations for myself, a way that I handle myself, that I react towards people. I have expectations towards God, who He should be, how He should hear me, maybe even how He should answer me. Any of these unrealistic expectations can cause anger when they don't happen just exactly the way that I think that they should happen. That basically is the root cause of anger, that I have rights. And it's a wrong belief about rights. As we move into the steps to solution, what we realize is that people are coming in our doors and people are coming to us with anger. Can't pinpoint what it is for, who it is to, what it is about. You're just angry with the world. It's often hard at that point to determine exactly where that anger started and what keeps driving it. This is one important thing as somebody sits in front of you, or maybe as you are doing your own inventory before you visit with somebody else, is to get a list. Who deserves this anger? Where did it come from? And the amount of anger you have towards each person on that list. We've talked earlier about the 4 primary sources of anger, of hurt, injustice, fear, and frustration. Now is the time that those are going to be coming back into play as we analyze the source of the anger towards each person that we have listed. It may be father, it may be brother. A lot of the times it's themselves. Sometimes it's God. But however you need to work it, find out who the people are in their past and in their present that they are carrying anger against. And then what percentage would they put towards each person? In the key, we use an anger pie, and it just allows you to divide it up and put a name and a percentage on each one. You can consider using that any way you want, just to know who they are mad at and how you would resolve it. If someone does put God on that list, and that happens so often, we walk them through the characteristics of God, the plans God has, and the purpose He has. God's purpose is to bring good out of evil. His purpose is to bring joy out of your sorrow. He uses your suffering for His greatest good. And He uses your troubles to make the character again and make the person that He first intended you to be. So we have the pie, we have God in there, and we are allowing one slice at a time to relieve their anger toward the abuser, toward the person. Also in your key, in the last section, in the solution section, There is one on alleviating your present anger. The first thing we have to do when we work with anger is to face it. Face it full on, not excusing anybody, not minimizing it. What has it done to me? How is my life different because of this? I don't know if you know the story of Joseph in the Bible. Joseph's father favored him, and he showed him by making him a beautiful embroidered coat. Well, you can imagine what that did to the brothers. They were so angry and so jealous. They had dug a pit, they threw him into the pit, and ended up selling him to somebody from another country. But Joseph didn't get bitter. Joseph accepted the sovereignty of God. He chose to forgive his brothers, and then he released everything to God. The admit, accept, choose, and release is what we end up walking through, each person that is on that anger pie. And it is also what we have to walk through for ourselves. Sometimes we can't even hardly admit the things that we have done to get us to such a point of anger and despair with ourselves. But this is what God has in mind. He wants the benefit of this anger, even if it's to ourselves, to act as that light on the dashboard, to allow me to know that action is necessary, change is necessary, forgiveness for myself and for others is necessary in order for us to move on. There is hope. Wherever we are, whatever situation that we are seeing that we are in, it is not us that is doing the change. It is God that is doing the change through us. And if you can see that and work that through with all of the people for your own self and then for others, the Lord has such a beautiful ending to their story. Bruh, 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 bruh. That's all, folks.